In the last 3 years, I've taken 3 companies from 0 to over $1 million a month in under a year. And so while part of that is obviously what was happening on the front end with the marketing and sales, what most people don't see is the back end. So for instance, with Closer.io, we have a back end that does over $1 million a month in recurring revenue. So this presentation is something that breaks down exactly how that works. And essentially, it's something I gave 2 years ago to a small mastermind group of entrepreneurs, but I've released it publicly for the first time on this channel, so enjoy. So the reason I created this mastermind really is to just distill down everything that we went through to get to $1 million a month. So that being said, I do want to acknowledge one of our members hit his first $1 million month this month, Boyd. So give him a round of applause. And then there's several other folks too, not $1 million a month, but I know hit record months. Victoria Kennedy, is Victoria here? I think hit 650. Spencer Vaughn over 700. Rob Bailey's team 350K. Justin Thomas 350. Tim Matthews couldn't be here but hit a $500,000. Jordan Duggar's team 450, and then Yamil and Laura 330K. If you had a record month and you weren't announced, blame Igor. That's who I got the list from. So I'm going to be talking about building 8-figure CSM teams. So that's like your fulfillment team that obviously delivers on the promise given to the client and does the upselling. So I think this is something, we took on 294 clients this month on our B2C, or 297. Yep, somewhere around there. And about 100 new enrollments for 86 front end and 20, I think, back end for our B2B. So we obviously have to manage a lot of clients, and I think our results are pretty good and our retention's good. So I think we have a lot to say here. First of all, who knows what a CSM team is? Okay, so like half people. And who has one? Whether it's just one CSM, a bunch. Even if you don't have one, or if this is your, even if you don't have one or you had an existing one, you're going to get a lot of stuff from here. So where is the clicker? Cool. So a few things we're going to cover. Pretty much it's going to be a be-all, end-all training on CSMs. We're going to talk about what it is, why implement it opposed to group coaching and just the specific group coaching, when to hire one, the responsibilities. I'm going to go through a scorecard, their comp, where do you actually find them, the interview process, onboarding and training, internal playbook, day-to-day team management, the CRM. We're going to do a quick overview of the upsell and retention. That's like almost like another 30 to 45-minute training in and within itself. So if you guys want me to go deeper on that, I can talk about that in my Q&A tomorrow. Or Mitchell and Brian are going to present as well. They can talk about how we do the upsells for especially our B2B. And then we're going to talk about the organizational structure as you scale your CSM team. So what is a CSM? So a CSM stands for Client Success Manager. Basically, anybody who enrolls in your program, they do that to get from where they are now to where they want to be, right? Obviously, you guys know that. So the importance of the CSM is not only to help them get there faster and fulfill on the promise, but to also experience all of the benefits that come along with buying your product. So the example I always use to really drive this home and the importance of it, because a lot of this comes from like the SaaS world, is where I learned a lot of this stuff, is if you buy Infusionsoft, like they call it Confusionsoft for a reason. And that's because when you buy it, like your chance personally of installing it and using it successfully without any help is very low. It's like basically not going to happen. So what they do is they give you a CSM so you can really activate the product and fully experience all the benefits associated with it. So obviously a course is probably going to be a little bit easier than Confusionsoft, but if you buy a course, you go through it, inevitably you have questions. You think like, well, how does this apply to me? My situation's a little bit different. The CSM is there to kind of guide you through all those roadblocks so you can get to where you want to go faster. So why do I recommend this opposed to like the traditional group coaching model? So if you guys are familiar, like this was popularized kind of 2016, 2017 for like Sam Evans and Ruffino when this model was just becoming pretty big, right? So it's like 2 group coaching calls a week, Facebook group, course. It's a great model to get started. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that model. I just think in our experience, especially, we started with that and moved to doing that and CSMs. And we have decreased refunds and chargebacks like by, a ton, especially for our B2C offer. More client results, obviously, more upsells. It also differentiates the product. So if you have a B2B product, as soon as somebody goes through 1 or 2 group coaching programs where there's like 1 support call a week, one of the questions they're always going to ask on a sales call is this group or is this one-on-one? So just having this in itself and having maybe 2 CSMs or 3 CSMs, you're going to make more sales on the front end, and that's not even counting more collections, more receivables, all of that stuff. So if you're B2B, I just think this is like a no-brainer. You should always have it. It's a pretty easy team to build. For B2C, I think even BizOp, I think you should definitely have it. Maybe you could get away with not doing it with dating and fitness, but a CSM, we'll talk about capacity and everything in a second, but each one can handle like a B2C CSM, the ones we have for RCA, they can handle 80 to 120 clients at one time. Okay. And that's for an 8-week time frame, which is 40 to 60 new clients a month. So if you were doing 120 new clients a month at 5K, which would be 600 grand a month front end, you would only need 2 CSMs to even just handle that based on this model. So you'll make that back in refund prevention alone, and your clients are going to get better results. And that's not counting upsells or anything like that. And so the other thing too, and I think this is the big mistake that most people in our industry make with their CSM teams, is they think of it kind of like a glorified customer support. So even if we're not upselling, we treat ours almost like a sales team. So we run it like a sales team, we KPI it like a sales team, and I really think it's the third sales team. Your first sales team is your setters that creates opportunity, your closers convert the opportunity, the CSMs retain and ascend the opportunity. So if you think of it like a sales team, even hire it like a sales team in some ways, I'm going to say you got to hire sales guys, it's going to do a lot better. So when should you hire it? I think this is easily like your first or second hire in business. When I got started, my first hire was David Davidson, and he's a CSM. Give him a round of applause. Still with us. So we were doing probably about like 50K a month at that time. And then right after that, we hired an EA. So in general, usually I recommend, and I know most of you guys aren't just getting started, but usually like a CSM is probably your first or second hire, or you make those 2 hires simultaneously. After that, when do you hire CSMs? Well, you have to think about it based on constraints. And so one of the things, like I've done one-on-one coaching calls with a lot of you guys, and just hundreds over the years, and a lot of people hire based on feeling, opposed to having a process of thinking and kind of hiring based on a science. Okay. So many people, they just like, I feel like I need some setters. I feel like we need more I feel like I need a media buyer, and they don't really think about like, why am I hiring actually? Okay. So you need to think about it this way. When you're building a business, ultimately you're building a system, a complex additive system. So the purpose of hiring is to basically bring somebody on who alleviates the tightest constraint within that system. By doing so, once alleviated, maximizes throughput of the actual system. Okay. So after you make that first hire, when are you going to be constrained on fulfillment? To know that, you have to look at capacity. And so these 2 roles here for B2B and B2C. Ben McClellan's another guy who we had to speak at the last one. He's all about, his thing is building CSM teams and client fulfillment. He totally agrees with these. And we've seen this with our clients as well. Typically for B2B, you're going to have 40 to 60 clients at any one time, unless you're Steve from our team who has 85. But you're going to have 40 to 60 clients at any one time. And then for B2C, you're going to have 80 to 120 clients at any one time. And so the way you want to think about it, and we've learned this one the hard way, is about probably 2 months in advance from when you need your next one, you need to start recruiting now. Because some hires don't work out. Sometimes it takes longer to find the person that you want. You have to do several interviews. What you don't want to do is you have, like, let's say 2 guys, they're both at 65, they're like completely stretched, and you have nobody, or you just hired somebody and you're going to start training. So this is something you have to hire proactively in advance. So responsibilities of a CSM. To understand what the CSM actually does, we have to understand what our client journey is. And so typically any high ticket program, what we're doing, it's going to look something like this. They purchase, right? Then there's the administrative onboarding. So the administrative onboarding is like, they sign the contract, you get them in the Facebook group, you get them in Kajabi. It's like all the stuff your ops person is probably going to do. And then we have the onboarding call. So the onboarding call has 2 purposes: resell them on why they wanted to do this in the first place, and also map the implementation pathway of how they're going to use the product to get from where they are now to where they want to be. I would recommend we tested group versus one-on-one onboarding calls. Brian would know more about this, but we went back to one-on-one just because I think refund prevention, people feeling like they're heard, people like just settling nerves, especially for our B2C, obviously for our B2B too, works way better. And then we have 3 activation points, and then we have retention and upsell. So an activation point, this is very, very key to understand. They're typically a point in the process that either offer a new profound sense of clarity for the client or deliver a quick result, okay? And by crossing an activation point, they're exponentially more likely to hit the next activation point, right? They're exponentially more likely to hit the next stage. Does that make sense? Okay? So, and obviously, the next stage is, AP2, then AP3, and then retention and upsell. Usually, the biggest one in any client fulfillment journey is figuring out what's number one and making sure they hit that first one, right? So I'm going to give some examples. But once activation points are crossed, I kind of just said this, but they're more likely to get the result, very important. They're more likely to complete the payment plan, not churn, refer your product, right? That's huge, obviously, and also upsell into a higher package. So is Nick Quorum here? I wrote this for you, dude. So let's say you help beauty salons get more clients. So your journey is they obviously purchase, admin onboarding, that's obviously the same. I put group onboarding here, but one-on-one onboarding, whatever. And then activation point 1 is like the repackaging of their offer. Okay, this is like a very common example. But let's say it's a beauty salon, they're selling like little low ticket things and it's random, they don't have a good front end offer. The first thing is they hop on, like they do some pre-work and they hop on with a one-on-one specialist. And basically that one-on-one specialist who's like a copy or offer specialist or whatever repackages their offer into this new front-end high-ticket offer that liquidates on cold traffic, all of that stuff. Now, they're not necessarily getting a quick result. They're not getting revenue from that. But what they are getting is a new profound sense of clarity, okay? And so I know in our experience, as well as some companies I sold for in the past, just getting people past that, people will just leave being like, just that call was worth the entire thing. Because now they have a new way of running a business, right? They have a new profound sense of clarity. Then let's say activation point 2, and I'm just like making this stuff up. I don't have a beauty salon consulting business, but this is just what I thought. So activation point 2 is, let's say, obviously once they have the offer, what do they need to do? They need to get people coming in the door. So you need to kind of like force them to get to that activation point. So maybe you have them do some pre-work again, hop on with an ads specialist, and then on that one-on-one call, that person just like sets up their ads right then and there and then presses go, right? So it just gets them right past that point. Then the third point is their new sales process being validated. That means their first customer comes in the door, and instead of just being like, hey, can I help you? Oh, no, okay, well, like, let me know what you want. They actually greet them, and they start a real sales process, and they sell that high-ticket offer. And if you had a business model like this, once you had that to the point where they've sold their first their first package of that new offer, and they have their ads coming in and people in the door, they're so much more likely to upsell and retain, right? It's like they have all of this momentum. Right, you created all of this inertia going the way you want. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. So how does CSM fit in? Well, obviously, in the same way your salespeople have like deal stages, right? The activation points are essentially the deal stages of your CSM team who's working to ascend that person to a referral, a result, and an upgrade, right? So you want to just think about it as deal stages. They just want to move. It's like a game. They were trying to move their prospects, move their clients across the deal stages. So given that to be true, they're going to be KPI'd on all of those activation points. And so we'll go over meeting cadence later. But essentially, when we go through meeting cadence, what we do is we go through basically where they're at on all of these points. Okay? So a really key thing to understand is there's 2 CSM models, or there's 2 types of CSMs. There's what's called expert CSMs, and then there's connector CSMs. Okay, expert CSMs, connector CSMs. Here's the easiest way to think about it. An expert CSM can answer 80% of all client questions. Okay, so for us, you guys got David and Igor and Josh. Those are expert CSMs. Like we hire like really good people that can answer pretty much all of your guys' questions, okay? For RCA as well, we do the same thing. It's just an expert CSM model. So we'll talk about why I like this model better, but sometimes it's just not practical. The other model is a connector CSM model, okay? They can only answer 20% of the questions, and then essentially what they are is a connector or concierge or a liaison between the client and basically the other resources available in the program. Right? It's like if you think about the program like a buffet, the connector CSM is like their guide so they know where to go in the buffet. Okay? So you guys have probably all been in a program like this, but like let's say there's a program, there's 5 group coaching calls a week. You know, there's sales, ads, offers, mindset, and there's a call on team. So there's one call every day, but it varies by topic. So they bring in like an outside industry expert on all of these topics to do like the weekly call, like you guys know what I'm talking about. And then maybe those industry experts have like a separate 10 slots open for 30-minute one-on-ones. So the connector CSM is kind of the liaison between the client and making sure they get on those group calls when they need them, making sure they know what their implementation pathway is, making sure they can get one-on-ones when they need one-on-ones, all of that stuff. It's like a much more concierge type model than otherwise, okay? And so one of the things I want to say, if you can, expert CSMs are always going to be better, but sometimes they're impractical, right? So let's say you teach SaaS companies how to get to 10 million ARR, right? There's so many skills that are involved in going from, let's say, 1 million ARR to 10 million ARR that you're not going to find somebody who can answer 80% of all the client's questions. Like if you find somebody who can do that, they probably have a $10 million a year SaaS business. Does that make sense? So yeah, you're not going to find somebody who can just answer all of the questions. Whereas like RCA, it's just a newbie who wants to be a salesperson, become a salesperson, right? So we only need salespeople to teach that. It's very easy to find people who can do that. Whereas if it's something like building a 8-figure SaaS company, much harder. So in that model, you have to do a connector CSM model, bring in outside experts for the different fields, and then you have to use the connector to guide them through that process, if that makes sense. So if you can, you should always do experts, but I mean, you know, and that, like I give you an example, sometimes you just can't. It just doesn't work. So you kind of got to think like, and I wouldn't get bummed out if you can't do connector or can't do expert. I've been a part of plenty of programs as a client and have been a part of companies who had a connector CSM model, and it was, you know, it's totally fine. So second thing, you also have to understand the difference between homogenous and non-homogenous markets. I think I just made up this term, but you'll see what I mean. So this is, I mean, you really don't know how to build your client journey until you know this, okay? And it's kind of the difference between a convergent thinking in your client fulfillment process and divergent, okay? So homogenous would be convergent thinking. There's very few variables, all right? What that means is every single client that's enrolled starts off at the same spot, they want to get the same result, and they need the same stages to get there, okay? So like the beauty salon example, that's a homogenous market because every single person can run the same playbook, okay? For RCA, like we're teaching people how to be sales reps. Every single person is not a sales rep, wants to become a sales rep. If you're doing Amazon FBA, every single person probably doesn't have an Amazon FBA business, wants an Amazon FBA business. Does that make sense? So the same playbook, more or less, works with every single client. And this basically makes your client journey linear. Okay, it makes it way easier. But sometimes, again, it's not practical. So there's other markets that are non-homogenous markets. That means you have clients starting off at different points with different problems with different goals. Okay, so with this company, Sales Team Accelerator and Boardroom, you know, at the lowest, we might have somebody at 30 grand a month. Our top client does 1.5 billion. So like, as you can imagine, that's not going to be the same client journey, right? And we have people who want to build setter teams. We have people who want to do, can you just get my sales reps to convert at 25%? We have other people who need to hire a sales manager. Some people need to hire their very first sales rep. It's all over the place. So what do you do then? You know, if you can't just like linear put them in a system. So what you have to do is you have to create tiers. All right. And I call it buckets up here. So typically what's going to happen is you could even see how I did it with the bullets. Typically there's different tiers and different pathways for each of the 3 to 5 different common problems your clients are going to have. Right? So like we'll have somebody who wants the setter team. We'll have somebody who's hiring their first sales rep. We'll have somebody who wants like more, you know, they have 5 sales reps, but their sales manager needs help and they're looking for like 5 more sales reps. And then we'll also have somebody who's just sales performance. You know, so we'll create 3 to 5 buckets and tiers and then ascend them. Like there's basically a different implementation pathway for each of those. Okay. Does that make sense? Anybody have a question on that?
How structured is that? Is that like days on a call and it's like, you're in bucket 3?
Yeah. So it's not perfect. It's very, very, because it is like with our clients, especially so broad, We don't have like a Plinko system where it's like, all right, like we're putting them here, then it's boom. But what I've done is I've created a lot of training so that they can identify, okay, this person needs a setter team. Here's the setter playbook. Does that make sense? Yeah, I tried to make it like there's a perfect 3 things, and it was like really hard.
Who do you typically like to see managing the CSM team?
Oh, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Was there different implementation pathways? I don't think you had a great course to see.
No, same thing. Yeah, so what you want to think about too is so your CSM, and this is the thing, is like they can identify, okay, this person needs a setter team, their closers suck, and they need to raise their price, right? So like we have all of this training material, like you guys know in the course, right? They got to think, and they're trained on knowing, okay, like this resource, this resource, this resource, this resource, opposed to the person just like going in the training and just doing it A to Z, and it's like, okay, I'm just going through a course. It's like they want to be like, hey, go through this video, go through this video, go through this video, and they do that on the onboarding call. I'm going to keep going, and then we'll hit some more questions. So I put this here, but this is probably my biggest mantra I say with our client success teams, and it's this distinction between proactive leadership and reactive customer service. And I kind of already alluded to this. So what you don't want is your CSMs to be like order taker, glorified question answer, support specialist, right? This is not what you want. You're not going to get a good ROI after that. You want them to be a leader. So being a leader, like what does that mean? It means a couple of things. It's first of all, when they're having that onboarding call, it's understanding where the client is, where they want to be, and also what is the correct implementation pathway for them, which we just talked about. It's also holding them accountable to executing that plan. And then the most important thing is when the client starts to make progress and achieves the result, they have to understand what the new problem is going to be. Because most people, what happens is the reason why most businesses or most clients, period, the reason why they're stuck is usually not because the person knows what the problem is, but doesn't know how to fix it. It's because the person's trying to fix the wrong problem, right? So like, for instance, somebody will move along our implementation pathway, and really, they think they need setters. They think they need like a fulfillment team. Well, maybe they do, but they think they need to redo their course and all these things. And in reality, it's like, nah, you just need to spend more on ads, right? So you need people who can identify like, okay, here is the path from 0 to $1 million a month or whatever, 0 to whatever the result is. Here's kind of the typical milestones, and they can kind of shine the flashlight for the client so the client can understand what the real problem is and stay focused. Because a lot of the times, the biggest reason their clients don't progress is because they're trying to fix the wrong problem or they get distracted. So you have to be a leader to hold them accountable in that way. Does it make sense? Cool. So the last thing I'll say here, obviously, this is much easier in a homogenous market setting because it's a linear path. It's much harder in a non-homogenous market. So preferably, if you have a non-homogenous market, you at least want expert CSMs. It's not always possible, but you would want that. So let me see if I can show you guys. Here's our scorecard. So there's, if you want a whole training on scorecards, read the book Who. This is where I got this from. There's nothing world-classly different, innovative here. We just followed the instructions. So basically, our scorecard for account managers are 3 parts. There's the mission, the outcomes, and then the position description. So basically, another thing I always say to our account managers is there's 2 things that really dictate the quality of support. It's the speed in which clients can get a response. And it's not just the speed, but it's also the depth and the response. So for instance, you could have high speed, but if it's a VA from the Philippines, are you really satisfied as a client? No. But if you could have depth in response, but if the only time you can get your question answered is once a week on a group call, then you don't have the speed. And so you need to balance this thing so you can find a system that gives both. Okay? And then we have the key outcomes here. There's not a whole, upsells, 30%. Position description, we go over the time, we go over the compensation, all of that stuff. We'll go over kind of more compensation guidelines in a second. How do I get it to zoom back in? Boom. So comp. So basically there's kind of 3 tiers of how you're going to comp your fulfillment team. You got, if they just do coaching, if they do coaching and setting, you'll see what that means in a second. Like not actual setting, but you'll see what I mean. Or if they do coaching and closing. Okay? So these are general guidelines. You're going to have to like think for yourself a little bit on these. But basically, if they do just coaching and leading through the activation points, it's going to be $5,000 to $8,000 a month on tracked earnings. Okay? So you could do that as like a base plus a variable comp based on how quickly they get moved past activation points, or you could just do a base. If they're doing coaching and upsells, obviously they're going to be a massive profit center for the business, right? So they're going to be able to make more money, and you're probably going to want more skilled people. So this is if they could do the coaching and the closing. Both of our teams do this, okay? So that one could be like $5,000 a month plus 5 to 8% of the back-end upsells paid out on cash collected, okay? So the OTEs of that could be $8,000 to $15,000 a month, and that's if they're selling themselves. The other one is like, let's say, and this is very common, is let's say the CSM doesn't have a sales skill set. Like they're really, really good at what they do, but you're like, dude, this person's not a closer. Like they're not going to be closing anybody. So like, maybe you teach day trading and like the people who are really good CSMs are like very analytical. They're not like sales guys. So what you would want to do in that case is you have them do the coaching and then you kind of make them a setter and they get 1.5 to 3% of all their people who close. And then they would set for somebody else. We'll talk about that in a second. So the on-track earning of that would be $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Now, all of this really depends. Like for us, I pay way more on-track earnings than these. But if you were like in a health and fitness coach helping people with weight loss, you could pay way lower than these numbers. You just got to think about what is going to be above market value for the type of person I'm trying to recruit. So who should be closing the back end? Like the same thing, when you're starting off, you should be doing all the sales calls. Well, you should be doing all the back end calls and building a library. This is super important. You should be doing it at first. Then in terms of passing it off, if you can't have your coaches do it, you could have your front-end closers do it. I don't really like to do that, but you could do it. You could have your client success director do it if they're good at sales. Or the other thing that tends to work well is having your sales manager do it. Because they're not doing the front end. They're coaching for the front end, but they could take calls for the back end.
Just a quick question. Do you find that the relationship of the account manager almost overcomes maybe lack of sales ability, or do you think sales raising in that environment?
So here's what I found is, and this is a common misconception even of our own team, is they think if they have a great relationship with the client, they're just going to be able to get them in. And sometimes that happens, but I'll tell you, like, you would be surprised somebody who got amazing results, they triple their business or whatever, and they don't want to continue for whatever reason. They joined a different mastermind, right? And so if it is the best thing for the person, you do really need somebody who can have a sales conversation and hold somebody accountable. Yeah, it really is. But it still, like if your CSM is just a setter, it's great that they have the relationship, and then that person can kind of be like the accountability person.
Let's say you have a CSM that's also they're setting, are they setting idea to closer that is an adjusted closer, or do another CSM that calls it?
So if the CSM is setting, they're going to be setting either for, at first, the owner. Like if you got less than 5 of these a week, which would mean you have a lot of clients. If you have less than 5, I would just take the calls. Because the owner, the guru, whatever, they're going to be able to clean up on these things, And so after you get capped on that, or you just find somebody who could take it, you're going to have them set for either the front end closers. I just really like to keep the front end closers focused on front end, but you could do that. I did that when I was a sales rep. I took both, but or the CSD if the CSD is good at sales, or you do the sales manager. Yeah, usually has to be somebody who has other responsibilities. You can't just hire somebody only for back end sales because they're not going to get enough volume. So where do we find good CSMs? So here's a framework that I've been using for a while. It's kind of in the training. I refined it a little bit, called the hiring triad. So typically with any hire, we're looking for these 3 things. So we want specialized knowledge. So if you guys know and follow Naval Ravikant, you should. If you don't, he's amazing. But he talks about specialized knowledge is knowledge that can only come from the experience of doing. So it's not something that you can go to school and learn something from, or take a program and learn something. It only comes from experience. That's why it's specialized. That's why it's unique knowledge. So you want people, in other words, who have a track record, who have demonstrated track record. By the way, you're probably not going to find that with your CSMs. It can kind of depend, but we'll come back to that. The other thing you want is industry acumen. So this took us a long time to understand of how important this is. What industry acumen means is how much they actually understand the industry, or if you think about your industry as like a tribe, can they speak the language of the tribe? Like if you guys have an onboarding call with somebody from our program and you could tell like this dude has no idea what high ticket sales even is, but they've been a CSM for like, Salesforce or something, but they have like no idea what high ticket sales even is. You're going to be like, this dude's worthless, right? So you need somebody who's like, oh, this guy gets it, right? The industry acumen is, do they get it? That's one of the biggest things with sales reps too. You want somebody who kind of like, oh, okay, like the dude knows what online marketing is, right? And the final thing, most important thing is buy-in. So that's buy-in. Are they passionate about the culture, the values, the vision of where you guys are going, and the values are how you're going to conduct yourselves on the journey of where you're going. The product, like are they passionate about the product? Are they fired up about that? And are they fired up about the market? Like do they actually enjoy the people that they're serving? So the example I always give to teach this is, for instance, if you sell weight loss to women 40 to 60, right? You could find the greatest car salesman ever, but they're not going to resonate with the market. They're not going to resonate with the product, and they're not going to be able to speak the language of women 40 to 60 trying to lose weight. So that person's probably not going to do as well.
Do you find you can recruit people at $10,000 a month who are essentially industry experts, or why would they take that role for $10,000?
Well, like in your company, you would probably need a connector CSM. So for instance, you probably have a connector CSM. You're going to pay them probably, it's not going to probably even be $10,000 a month. And then what you're going to do, where is it at? So you see sales ads, offers, you're going to have raising money. You're going to have fund management. You're going to have finding deals. You're going to have legal and admin, like a call for that. And then another call. I'm just making stuff up, but I think you get what I'm saying. So, but then because industry experts, most of them, like they want to kind of get in the info space, but they're not really in it. So you're like, hey, do you have an hour a week to talk to, 200 of my students all want to do multifamily syndication, right? So you bring in the experts for that, and then you just have the connector CSM be the liaison between those people, and it's much higher leverage. That's the thing. Like I was giving the example about the SaaS company. You're not going to be able to find a dude who's built a SaaS company to 10 million ARR who wants to be your CSM for 10K a month. Does that make sense?
Cool. People like kind of take from, since you said they're kind of like we give them space, and you have to pay them, or like have you negotiated ways to not be able to suggest comping people that are really like the calls, like the industry experts that are doing what?
It depends, man. Like a lot of we don't pay any of our people, but that's because they just get like crazy referrals. So they should be paying me, They're getting a lot of referrals. But yeah, you should pay them something. It doesn't, I've seen $1,500 to $2,500 a month, right? $2,500 a month for one person would be a lot, but hopefully that person could teach multiple things. But most people just like enjoy it, like, especially if you're not in the info space, like they're just like, oh yeah, like I'd love to help out with like teaching people how to like raise money or something. So how do we find them? All of our team has been found through referrals, both teams. Maybe our RCA CSMs, we have some people that went through our program, or maybe they were sales reps or something. But I know SDA, almost everybody was referral. And also the other thing is too, with an account management role, a CSM role, you're probably not going to find somebody who's done the role before. And at least in our industry, it's so unique. And you don't want to, like I said, you want industry acumen, right? So you're not going to take some SaaS CSM and they're going to really struggle in this role. So we just look for buy-in, most importantly, and like, can they speak the language and can they help people, And so inside out hiring approach, we find them through, typically we'll just do referrals. We'll ask our clients, we'll ask our team. I'll ask like my close industry peers, like, who do you know? Usually if you just go ham on just referrals, and like, I tell my team, like, reach out to 50 people asking for referrals. If you have your entire team do that, you're going to find somebody for sure. Then you can ask your client group. Then we go to audience, like social, email, etc. Then you could do like outbound recruiting. You could try to poach somebody. You could hire a recruiter, job boards. But most of your CSMs guys are probably just going to come from your program. Because, if we go back to buy-in, they're passionate about the market. If they're your client, they're passionate about the market because they are the market, right? They're passionate about the product because they bought the product, right? And then they're passionate about your culture, vision, values, and what you're doing because they applied for the position in the first place. So it's like, and they can speak the language. So it's kind of nice just to pluck them right from your group. So interview process, I mean, this is nothing different than what we teach you guys for the sales reps. We do an application. They put in, so that, once we approve the application, we ask for a video assessment. They send in a video answering a few prompts. After that, they do a group interview. Then we proceed that to a one-on-one interview. And then we give them some homework. So the homework we give them is like a recording of me going over our mission, vision, and values with our entire company. And we just tell them to send back their thoughts. Right? And usually this also, by doing this, one, it's qualifying them, and two, like they get super pumped about working with us. So we do that. And then we have them do another one-on-one interview with somebody else to assure culture fit. And then we do the scorecard interview, which is where we go over that scorecard, and we get agreements and commitments like on all of those outcomes. It's like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can we commit to doing this? All that stuff. So very, very similar. If you want more in-depth on like screening interview and all that stuff, it's all in the training. It's basically really the same as what we use for the setters and closers. So one last thing too here is we have a long ramp for CSMs due to the cost of change, okay? So I think I would try to wait at least 2 weeks before giving them accounts, because if you ramp somebody up to 40, 50, 60 accounts, then you find out, oh, this person stinks. Now you got to transition 40 to 60 accounts. So it's brutal.
How do you handle that transition? You just kind of go, I'm no longer working with this guy or not working with this guy.
I don't know. Mitchell, how do we handle that transition? Were you paying attention?
Got him.
It was Mark's question.
Okay, CSM that has 60 whatever, and you want to take one of those guys and get your new CSM. Let's do that. It's like, hey, he's got a new CSM now. Congratulations.
Dude, I want to handle it. Really careful. Well, yeah, so we're doing it right now, and the way that we thought about it is I just made a list of all the clients that we're doing handoff with, and we had a system called like easy accounts, easy personality, hard, difficult account in terms of like the problems. So the docs, difficult personalities, like to take a certain type of person. So we just like rate them on that, and then I just pair them up with this specific account manager that would be like look at that person. And then we do is a handoff with that the account manager working with. They got high up in one. They do the handoff like what they want to ball just a mobster.
So are you going to cover that horror war in years? Because what I'm thinking about it now is now that we have multiple CSMs who get to based on client profile. That's where we can cover that.
Yeah, we could do it in Q&A, or you could talk about it tomorrow. But
for our CA, we just have them a connector go with great new group chats when them to see.
Yeah.
We literally just have a list of clients, disperse them mutually in the new CSMs, and now they.
Yeah, they got a lot of people. For the B2B, I know we did like me or Mitchell would do a call, like the old one would book them on a call with me and the new one, and we'd reset the implementation path. Yeah, but that's a lot of work. I mean, so RCA, you can't do that. There's too many of them. Let me make sure I get through this. I don't want to go over. So onboarding and training first 7 days. I mean, I don't know if there's any rocket science stuff here compared to any other position, but there's basically two types of onboarding. You guys should know this. There's company-based onboarding and role-specific onboarding. Company onboarding is the onboarding everybody goes through no matter what, whether they're a CSM or a salesperson or an EA or whatever, right? They all go through that. That could be going through the product, getting into Slack, getting introed in Slack, attending all the team meetings. It's like what everybody does no matter what. The role-specific onboarding is obviously what's specific to the role. So for us, for our people for at least account management or for SDA, they go through the entire SDA and 7 SDA training. They shadow the lead, which if like you're just starting this team, you're going to be the lead, right? So they shadow the lead for an entire week, and you want to make sure they shadow across all these different types of calls. Because really when you boil it down, there's only a few types of calls a CSM is going to have. They're going to have a one-on-one check-in. They're going to have an onboarding. For us, we do call reviews. They're going to have group calls. They're going to have upgrades. That's it. So you want to make sure there's a disbursement between all of those different calls of the person who's shadowing. One thing we just started is anybody who's a new hire, we have them attend all different meetings from all different departments so they can understand how marketing works and client success works. And also it's like they get like pumped doing that. It's like fun. And then we'll start with 3 one-on-ones in a week, and then we'll taper down to 1 one-on-one a week. And we'll talk about the one-on-one structure in a second. So key points in the first week are what you're looking for. Like, how are they showing up on meetings? How are they interacting? Are they a culture fit? If they're shadowing other account managers, what are the other account managers saying about them? At the end of an upgrade call, when you say, hey, what did you think about that call? Are they giving you good thoughts? Are they getting it, or are they lost? You'll just be able to tell. And then also a lot of temp checks on the one-on-ones. The second 7 days, we usually, this is second or third 7 days. Sometimes you want to wait. If you're really okay, this person's an all-star, you can start giving them accounts in the second 7. If not, wait to the third 7. But when you're ready, you just give 5 accounts in the first week. And then you basically have the lead AM shadow them on all of the stuff that they're doing, right? We'll talk about Asana, but you want to make sure their Asana notes are good, they're detailed, they're clear. You want to review their calls. So the same way you got to review the sales team's calls, you got to review their calls too. So you got to review their calls. Are they building rapport? Are they establishing leadership? Or are they being a proactive, bend over customer service person, right? So you don't want that. You don't want them to be timid. Are they diagnosing and prescribing the right implementation path? And then when we're giving them coaching and feedback and all of that stuff, are they taking it well? So then after that, day 14 and on, what we're going to do is we're going to reach out to a lot of the clients. And if, Igor is new, I'm going to reach out over text or messenger and be like, hey, man, just wanted to check up. I know you're with Igor. He's in his first, I might not say he's in his first couple of weeks, but I might say, how's your experience been so far? Is he helping you, etc. Right? We're just spot checking. We call it CS frame, customer service frame. And then 30 days in, we do a scorecard review. So we go through that scorecard I showed you guys, and then every little point in terms of the outcomes and the character traits that they need to achieve those outcomes, we go through every single one of those, and we grade them, I think it's 1 to 10, on how they're doing and give them feedback. I know from, especially Mitchell and Savannah telling me, we weren't doing this, and we started doing this, and it's crazy because you'll see somebody who you're I don't know if they're really going to work out, and then you do that, and then over the next week, for sure if they're going to work out. Because most people, when they get that directed feedback and they're oh yeah, this was the scorecard, this is what I agreed to, I'm not doing that, they'll start to bust ass to be able to do it, or they're just going to quit, which is what you want. So then we'll just gradually ramp them to 60 to 65 accounts, and we always do ongoing call reviews. So we're always the same way. You got to, do a lot of call reviews for your sales team. You got to do a lot of call reviews for this, and then we'll ongoing periodically temp check with clients. So I might not have been able to get, we'll come back to this at the very end. Basically, what you want to do is create a Google Doc that just has literally everything they need to know, and it's like a library of an SOP. I think it might be the last slide is where I put the link. So how do you manage the team day to day? So this is boring, but this is probably the most important thing, okay, is how you actually, the cadence and what you manage the team. So there's 4 key things here. You're going to have a daily meeting for your CS team. You're going to have the weekly reports. We'll talk about what weekly reports are in a second. You're going to have your one-on-ones, and you're going to have your end of days, okay? So the daily meetings is key, and you got to do it every day for 60 minutes a day. Now, if you just have one CSM and one sales guy and a media buyer and an EA, just have one team meeting. Just you have a team-wide meeting every single day. But once you get to 20, 25, 30 people, you need to split out for departments. So for us, we have a sales meeting, we have a marketing meeting, we do fulfillment and ops in the same meeting. So we meet together and then we do breakouts, right? And then the only other meeting I think is recruiting. So that's not bad. I mean, that's 4 hours of total team-wide management. Okay?
Yeah, it's questioned previously there. We've had a situation where our CSMs have expressed interest in part-time sales, and that recent sales lead will express interest in taking on accounts and being CSMs. What's been your experience with that, and how
Yeah, well, the first question I have is why do they want to do it? Because if they just want to make more money, and let's say you don't have a variable comp structure for them to be doing the upsells, but they want to make more money, then you could just change it for them to where they could do the upsells and get comped on it, right? But, I mean, there's a lot of CSMs who, I don't know if we've had any CSMs who've moved to sales. We've had sales who wanted to move to CSM. I just kind of think of what's best for the person. And ultimately, okay, they want this position, but why do they want it? Because the why, maybe I can align the incentives of why they want it by maybe molding or changing their current position. So it just kind of depends. But yeah, I mean, we've had plenty of people move around and all these different roles in it. It makes sense. So daily meetings, 60 minutes a week, 5 days, or 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Here's the cadence. This is key. right? So a lot of you guys who like hate meetings, probably because you don't know how to run meetings. Because the quality of your culture is literally the quality of your meetings. And one of the things I like to say all the time is, like, I think we can all agree culture is important, right? Company culture is important. Well, if you have a remote-based company, where does your culture set in? I mean, culture can only happen when 2 or more people of any company are together, right? Well, if you have a remote-based company, that can only happen on meetings. So the quality of your meetings is the quality of your culture. And when you actually think about it that way and you tell your team that, your meetings are going to get way better. That's one of the things when you guys have access to attend our sales meetings, people are like, oh my God, this is like way different than what I was doing. And they just see it's like a totally different type of meeting. So anyways, we start off with wins, same way as sales, right? Wins all the way around. And then we'll do any quick announcements. Then we go over receivables and late payments every single day. Every single day. Receivables and late payments. So that alone, if you just do that, I guarantee you're going to make more money than this is going to cost you, hiring the people. Then projections, which is basically their activation points and their upsells. So the same way you go around and it's like your sales team and you're basically seeing, okay, like, you know, where are you at for the week? What was your projection? Are you on pace? If you're not on pace, why are you not on pace? What's in the pipeline? The same way you do it with your sales team, you do it with your account managers. It's the same thing. Then we go through training. Now, this last part, we got lazy on. We weren't doing this. And I was like, well, we train our sales team every day. We do call reviews for our sales team every day. Why aren't we doing call reviews for this? So now, every single day, they'll bring client problems and questions. They'll bring like people's VSLs, and I'll review the VSL, record a Loom video, shoot it back to the person. I'll just do it right on the meeting. So they'll bring materials, VSLs, landing pages. I mean, I'll look at it. Mitchell will look at it. We'll bring their onboarding forms. So we'll look at like a new client, and I'll be like, yeah, they need to do this, 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 and this. And then I'll teach the CSM. Not only am I setting the implementation pathway for the client without the client knowing it, I'm also teaching the CSM how I'm thinking about it so that they can actually now do it successfully. And then when they see a client like that again, it's like pattern recognition, they can do it. And then we'll review their upsells. Okay? This is a game changer. I don't really know how, like, this is how you train your team over time, because it's going to be really, like, you're not going to probably find a CSM who just, like, gets it from day one. I mean, you might, but it's going to be tough. So it's like over time, it's just this daily repetition of training every single day. You know, just like you're a sports team. And you just, like, you practice every single day. You drill the same plays every single day. And then eventually you'll have somebody else on your team, we'll talk about this, who's a lead and can then just teach all this stuff for you. Question?
So do you actually have your CSMs go after late payments, or do you have 12?
I think it depends on the CSM. What do we do? Mitchell, what do we do? We're in the middle of a question. Dude, you were out late last night. Yeah, you were. I heard some stories. Brian, do we have them? I think we have the operations team reach out, and then isn't it like the operations team, and then it's the fulfillment team if operations can't get them, and then after that, it's like Mitchell starts reaching out.
Operations can't get her within the first 24 hours, and then you see.
Okay, yeah, and then it just escalates. Let me get through this. We'll do questions at the end. Oops. So one-on-ones, you know, obviously every single team that we have, every single full-time person, we do a weekly one-on-one. You got to do this. It's not hard to do. The main thing is just doing it, okay? So this will be for 30 minutes weekly. There's 2 intentions for this: to connect personally and to give coaching and feedback, okay? Just, you know, I wouldn't even overthink this. When I started doing these, I didn't even have a framework for it. I just was like, I'm going to start doing these, and they're extremely productive. Some questions and prompts you can have. I just ask the person, usually like a lot of my direct reports, they're pretty, you know, they're executive leadership level. So I'm just like, what do you want to cover? And they just bring stuff to cover. All right. But then we'll go over KPIs. So, you know, again, like, where are you at in relation to your KPI or your projection or your sales or whatever? Are you on pace? If you're not on pace, why are you not on pace? What's your pipeline like, et cetera? We'll go over, you know, where's your energy at? Are you having fun? I ask that all the time. Are you having fun? If they're not having fun, I mean, fun's one of our core values. So we like to work hard, but we also want to enjoy the process and have fun as a part of it. How was last week? So we kind of reviewed last week. Like, tell me about last week. What was going on? What were the challenges? What was happening? What were the wins? How's this week looking? You know, it can be different for every position. I'll write down notes sometimes that, like, oh, here's some stuff I need to share with this person. So I have like a little notes thing, and it's like one-on-one with so-and-so. and I'll just have a few notes of like stuff maybe I noticed, but I didn't want to share with them that week, so I'll share with them on the one-on-one. Any feedback for them, any feedback they have for you. One of the things like Savannah does, she gives her team like all of these prompts or something like that the day before, and then they fill it out and give it to her the day before. So then that way they kind of know what they're going to go in and talk about. But I just roll in and just kind of freestyle it. But you just should do this. It's not rocket science, but it makes a huge difference. Even when we had our sales team and we were doing bi-weekly and we moved it to weekly one-on-ones, huge difference. So, should do it. And then we do end of days. So basically, same thing as we do end of days with salespeople, we do end of days with everybody in the company, right? So for a fulfillment end of day, it's just like what they did during the day, the calls that they had. There's like a checklist, like is Asana up to date, is Voxer clear, Slack clear, then overall how they're feeling. So if you want to go through the end of days training in the course, it's the same exact thing. And I linked an example there as well. So then we do this weekly review. So you got to take a picture? Well, we're going to give you the slides. Yeah, I know. Now you realize all your picture taking is in vain. So the same way when I was in, I went to school for like pre-med. And when I did an internship, one of the things I like really hated about it was that like you don't really interact with the patients. You basically just do a bunch of charting. All right, so it's a bunch of charting, a bunch of noting. Like you gotta like, any interaction you have with a patient, you gotta like write it down. What happened? What was going on? All this stuff. So I mean, we're not that intense, but it's kind of the same thing. So we have a CRM for all the clients. We have it in HubSpot. We do the noting in Asana because HubSpot is just slow. So Asana is a little bit more lightweight, integrates with stuff a lot better. And basically, every single week they'll go in, they'll use this template, and they basically go through where the client is at, what they're working on right now, what were our interactions this week, what are our next steps. And then the lead goes through and reviews all the noted charts for every single client once a week, right? Now, I will say we're getting to a point where like it's a lot of notes to review, so we're kind of trying to figure out a better process to do it. But this is what we've been doing for like 2 years. Is literally this. And what's nice about this is what we'll see is the lead will see a blind spot that the account manager didn't have. So for instance, maybe somebody's, I don't know, maybe they're launching YouTube ads, but their Facebook ads are really profitable. And the lead might be able to see, like, why aren't they just doubling down on Facebook ads and just doubling ad spend? Why are they doing a new channel? But then the other CSM doesn't know that's a wrong thing. So they're able to see kind of like, it's not like the CSM's intentionally doing a bad job or not putting in effort, but they're able to see like, oh, okay, they're actually misdiagnosing this client's problem. So they go through all the notes and then they write down a bunch of, like we just use a Google Doc, and we write down a bunch of questions about all the CSM's clients. And then on, like, I think it's on Tuesdays is when we do it, we review all of their interactions they have with clients. Not all of them, but we review like any red flags, any problem clients, anybody who's, been tough, etc. So I was going to pull up Asana. I just can't log in on this computer. Basically, so the way we have Asana set up, it's just like a CRM, right? So there's pipeline stages, okay? So there's different pipeline stages. We have the name of the client, and then there's a due date. The due date is when they are expired, so that we want to know 2 weeks in advance. We need to start getting them on the upsell call to ascend them, right? So we have the expiring date. Then we have another tag that says tier. So like, how I was saying there's different implementation pathways? We have like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. And then under that, so in the description part of Asana, we'll have like their onboarding, we'll have a link to like their contract, their onboarding form, all of the important notes. And then in the comments, we'll have all of their weekly charting. Okay. So our stages for STA, I put here, it's like needs to return onboarding material, needs to book onboarding call, booked onboarding call, active account, pause, graduated, offboarded, refunded. And then, RCA, very similar, a little bit more linear. We have onboarding, recruiting, 6-week check-in, recruiting pipeline, placed, pause, yellow red flags, cancel, refund. So, we use Asana for it. I have a separate video. I just added it to the course today that goes over Asana and how we do this. Okay? So don't be like, oh my God, how does he do it? So upsells retention. Again, we already have a video that goes over our upsell process. Everything from when you reach out to the person to get them on the call to what to say on the call to get them to buy the upsell. Okay? We already have that in the training. Probably a lot of you guys are going to want to re-review it after this. But here's what I want to say, just basically summarizing this slide about how big of a profit center this can be. So especially for B2 solopreneur or B2B type offers, I recommend 2x the price, 2x the time. Okay, so if you're selling 10K on the front end for 90 days, that'd be 20K for 6 months. 20K for 6 months, right? 2x the price, 2x the time. If you get 50% conversion from front end to back end, 2x the price, 2x the time, you double your company, right? So I don't think we're above 50% now. I know last time we measured it, it's a little bit difficult to measure because there's so much lag. There's like a 3 to 4 month lag period. But I know we were at 57%, which means we were contracting more on the back end than we were doing on the front end. And when you can do that, I mean, nobody else in high ticket is doing that. So when you can do that, guys, like the amount of money you can spend on ads to acquire customers is just laughable. Like nobody's going to be able to compete with you. So even if you can't, like if you're B2C, I'll just be honest, you're probably not going to hit 2x the price, 2x the time at 50% conversion. It's probably not going to happen. But if you could just get a 20 or 30% increase in revenue, that could liquidate all your ad spend. Like for RCA, our backend, we're launching it next week. Our goal is literally just to pay for ad spend. Because it's a B2C, it's such an ads heavy offer. Just to pay for ad spend and do events, build a better community and keep people engaged. That'll increase collections, and we'll have a ton of marketing material and a ton of content that comes out of those events.
So Matt, is there a point at the contract timeline that you have that secondary goal?
Yeah, we aim for like 2 to 3 weeks in advance. We just look at the due date. I mean, they set projections. So it's like they go through their Asana and they got to set projections in the beginning of the month. They're like, who can I get in this month? They're like, maybe I need to sneak in somebody from next month. So, yeah. So here's the organizational structure as you scale. Basically, it's the same exact thing as a sales team. That's, the whole thing I've been telling you guys, like, we run this thing like a sales team. So once you get about 3 to 5 CSMs, this is what happens in sales too. Once you get about 3 to 5, you'll have a clear standout, right? You make that person a lead, right? Then eventually you're going to transition that person to director. When the director has about 8 to 10, then what you're going to do is you'll probably need another lead or maybe even 2 leads, and then you do kind of two teams and a director. So like our sales team, this will give you an example. Our sales team for RCA has team 1, team 2, and they each have their team leads, and then Brian runs the organization. Does that make sense? Right? So that's kind of how you scale. Typically, it's like, I think, you got the Jeff Bezos 2 pizza rule, whatever it is. So, if a team can't sit around a table and share pizza or 2 pizzas, it's too big. So we found when you have too many direct reports, about 10's the cap, it really takes away from the team. Yeah, you have a lot of entropy. So a lot of y'all ask, how do we do lead comp? So when you have a team lead, how do you compensate them? So I've tried a lot of different things, and this is what I think is the most fair, and like it just made the most sense to us. So we do a 90, 100, 120-day bonus structure on a 30-day basis. So what that means is they set the projection, or we set a team projection. In this case, the lead would be on the team projection. If they hit 90% of that projection, they get a tier 1 bonus. If they hit 100%, they get a tier 2 bonus. And 120%, they get a tier 3 bonus. So like they could make, let's say, I'll use somebody in the company that does makeup. Like maybe they're doing 5K a month and they have a variable comp like this. And they set a projection. 90 would be like they get 1K. 100 would be like they get another 1K. And 120 would be like they get another 1K. And you could do it 110. I don't know why I did 120. 110 would probably be fine too. I just want like a stretch performance for that, next thing. So that's how we do it. What's nice about this is who's ever made a comp structure that they regretted after they made it? They've realized it was the bad comp structure. Yeah. So this only locks you in for 30 days. And then when you have, so basically anybody who's, I'll probably could do a separate talk about this, but there's different sort of leadership style roles. There's like producers, there's managers, there's integrators, and then there's visionaries, right? Those are the 4 types of leaders in any company. Your visionaries and your integrators at the top are more long-term thinking. You want them more on like profit share. But your producers who are like execution and like 30-day projection and making sure the team executes, you want them on a 30-day basis. But it's good to start no matter what, people on a 30-day basis, because a lot of times, like, you just don't know what you don't know. I mean, like, you're like, I don't know if this, are we going to scale this thing like 5X or are we not? Or, it's really hard to give people a flat percentage, be that top line or profit, when, a lot of times you're just starting off. You can't really predict what's going to happen in a couple of years. Eventually, you can get a feel for it, and you're like, okay, you get this percentage, and you're always going to have that percentage. And then you'll know. But just do this until you know, and then it just resets, right? And they're going to make the same OTEs every single time, right? The OTE range is going to be the same, but you could also increase the OTE range. So like in that example, maybe it's 5K a month, but instead of 1K, 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 I might do 2K, 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 right? So now they have an OTE increase, but I'm still only locked into a 30-day. I can always revert back, right? And this is good for the person too. I mean, maybe they get locked into a comp structure that stinks. They're like, well, this sucks. I thought I'd be making more money. You said this was going to happen. And you're like, well, I thought it was. So this is a really, really good way to kind of get a feel for like, okay, like, and then you can look at the P&L. You can see the percentage they're actually making a profit. And then you can start to figure out like, if this is a long-term thinker in my company, do I want to move them to profit? So that was like a separate nugget, but that's also how we do the leads. Does it make sense? Cool. That was it. So, questions?
One of the constraints that we're trying to solve for is we're consistently out of KPI for ascensions on the back end. So we have a goal of 20 every single month, and the closest that we've gotten to the last 4 or 5 is 14. So it's either a capacity issue for the CSMs where they don't have enough time to allocate to like making upsell offers, or it's a skill issue.
Yeah.
For example, somebody's like, hey, I'm all in on committing to this back end offer on group coaching call, and then they're not.
What's the percentage though? Because you're saying like 14. I mean, are you shooting for 50% or are you only at like 20? Yeah, because I mean, if you were like, oh, I'm only doing 14, but 14 is 50%, I'm like, dude, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so it would be about 15%.
You're at 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can definitely do better as well. I mean, especially with y'all's market. Almost, I would guarantee. You know what people underestimated with the upsells is they just don't realize like it's a freaking sales call. Like, I mean, and we even fall into this trap. We're like, dude, you increased your revenue by, $300,000 a month. Like, what do you mean you're not going to join? We just think they're just going to come in. You got to really treat it like a sales call and re-demonstrate, hey, over the next 6 months, here's where you're at. Here's where you want to be. Here's the things we need to do to get there. So it's like, I'll tell you, when I sold full time, I did both. And I still have all the recordings of them too. Some of my hardest, highest pressure closes were on the back end. Especially because I'm like, this guy's like, dude, we tripled your business. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm going to join this other mastermind. I'm like, what are they going to help you with? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, you need to join this. So it's probably a sales process, unless it's obviously your client results. Like that goes without saying. But if your clients are getting results, you got to have good sales calls.
So the constraint that we're trying to solve for is we actually want to have the front end sales rep take those calls. So first it'll be one of the founders, either Brett or I.
Yeah.
We'll have one of the front end people take it. So my question is, how do you open the dialogue with a CSM who's already getting a base plus commission right now?
Just move them to the setter percentage. Yeah, I mean, so are they not successfully upgrading as many people as they want?
Right.
And they're feeling bad about it? Yeah, it's like, hey, dude, you know how like you're doing this thing that you don't really want and you're not getting paid the amount that you want based on your whatever? Well, we're going to give you a smaller percentage, but then you have you set for a professional salesperson so you can do what you do best and still hit your earnings. Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to lower the commission. I mean, instead of paying 5 or 8%, you might pay 1.5 to 3. I would go back through the slides and look at the OTEs. Because it's like what? It was like I said, like 5 to 8. If they're setting, it's 8 to 10. And then usually like upwards of 15 if they do everything. It's hard to get them to do everything. I mean, we're lucky because we teach sales. So to be an expert CSM in my company, you got to be good at sales. But if you're good at sales, you can do the upsells. I mean, it's not just us. I mean, there's plenty of other people who use that model. But you might want to look at maybe having a dedicated person for it. We can go as long as y'all need.
So, quick one for you, Cole. We're at about 20% conversion front end to back end. So our business is helping coaches grow their business. Our front end, we're really helping like complete newbies. So these are people that have never had a client before, to like maybe they have a couple of really low paying clients. So through the front end, our goal is to get them their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high ticket clients.
Mm-hmm.
So in the back end right now, we actually don't offer it to everybody.
Yeah.
We offer it to maybe, we get about 45 to 50% actually get their first high ticket client within the 8 weeks. So we only have about half of our clients that actually make it to that point of starting to enroll high ticket clients through the 8-week program.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can only offer it to about 50% right now.
Well, that's your problem. Yeah. You should offer it to everybody. Yeah, because you should offer it to everybody. One of my clients did like...
We should offer it to everybody and not limit it.
Oh, everybody. Yeah, one of my clients did like 50, 60 million this year, same market. Yeah. I've never seen... They have an interesting model. They do these huge promotions. And then they go into the fulfillment, and then they do another huge promotion. That's not my model, but, they crush it. So... anyways, they're complete newbies. So I asked the same thing. I was like, well, like every single thing is like a 16-week thing, and your people are buying every single thing. Like, how are you guys doing that? And they just sort of like, dude, they just want to be a part of something. Yeah. And like, they're like, we don't like super hard close them or anything, but like, you got to realize what happens is like your market, like think about when you started, right? So you were off, like you wanted to do this online thing. Everybody in your hometown thought you were weird. And then you were starting, you were like off on your own island. And then you probably joined something or got a part of something. You're like, oh, dude, all these people are like me. It was like the first time ever. That's like the craziest experience. Well, all your clients are doing that. They're like, they get a part of your thing and they're like, oh, this is the first time ever I've been a part of a great... Yeah, so they're just going to join something else. You might as well give them the opportunity to just go to something. It might not be a 25K, right? It might be 15 or 10. But if it's event and community-based, they will just want to continue to be a part of something for nothing else but the energy, right? So a big thing, I bet you could double just by offering everybody. And sure, like if they didn't get any clients, I'm not advocating you just hard close them and take, grandma's last dollar. Yeah, if they want to do, I would just let them in.
Like, because we are part of the reason is because we want to make sure that the back end, the mastermind is
high quality people.
It's high quality.
Yeah.
So I think the answer to that, how to mention as well is the tier system. So we have 2 tiers in it already.
Yeah.
And we would just kind of institute a third lower level tier.
Well, what you should do is put a reward program in to where once they get to like, let's say 20K a month or whatever it is, they can come to a VIP session where that's a pre-day session or after-day session just with you.
We do that right now.
Yeah, so that you already have it.
30K a month clients already. Before our event, they come to a free day VIP session.
Yeah, there you go. So I would just keep that in place, and that'd open it up to everybody. And I think, the things you're worried about won't be as much of an issue.
Cool.
Yeah.